Hi, everyone. Farmington Mayor Nate Duckett. Public safety is a critical component of our community. It takes up one of the biggest portions of your local government's budget. With us today is going to be Farmington Chief of Police Steve Hebbe. We're going to be talking about the challenges that we're facing in policing today, the part that we play as community members, and how we're going to face those challenges tomorrow. Hi, everyone. Farmington Mayor Nate Duckett. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Mayor's Table. With me today, special guest of the city of Farmington and of this show.
Friend of the show.
We have Chief of Police, Farmington Police, Steve Hebbe. Chief, thanks for being here today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Well, these are, we planned this episode months in advance. And,
yes.
As things happen, I mean, there's always new stuff popping up, and this is a pretty trying time for our police department. I just want to say thank you for your leadership and continued push for what you do for the city of Farmington. I just want to say thank you for that as we start the show.
Sure. Well, thank you.
Yeah, it's a friendly environment, Chief. We want you to speak freely here today.
It feels friendly.
Well, we wanted to come on and kind of maybe talk a little bit at the time we had planned this, kind of local crime stats, things that were going on here locally, things you're concerned about. There's lots of different things happening, but we've had a couple of incidents here. It's kind of turned us down a different corner maybe today, but we're going to touch on crime stats. We want to talk about the two officer-involved shootings that we've seen so far in 2022. I want to get into recruiting, real-time crime center, which is a big deal. Also, we're in the middle of a CALEA assessment. Maybe you can break that down for us. So,
sure.
Let's kind of talk. We finished 2021. You did a great presentation to the city council, kind of discussing, crime stats at that point over the last few years. We looked back to 2016 for everything: calls for service, violent crimes, property crimes, and other crimes, and kind of laid it out, looking at the averages over that time period and where we came out in 2021. And if somebody were to look at this, look at these graphs, look at this data, I mean, you would think 2021 was a banner year. Obviously, it's a very different kind of year because we were still partially in lockdown for part of it, and
sure,
a lot of people were staying inside to stay safe, so to speak. But calls of service, for example, I think it's interesting for folks to know. In an average year over the past 5 years, we've had 86,335 calls for service.
Yes.
In a 12-month period, 365 days, that is a high volume of calls for a city of only 46,000 people.
Yes.
And I've had people ask in the past, why is that? Why is our call so high in a place that is only 46,000 people?
I think it starts with who we are in the Four Corners area. I mean, and what we're trying to set ourselves up for. So we're kind of the mecca for shopping, for dining, for entertainment, and we've done a lot of things, certainly in your run as mayor, to enhance that and attract people to our city. So although we're 46,000, I think our estimates are conservatively between 110 and 120. 110 to 120,000 people will show up on starting probably Thursday nights and going through the weekend. So that really does task a department that's otherwise built for a city of 46,000 or so. So you do see our department is bigger than most departments for a city our size, which reflects that. We really wind up policing a large population that comes to our city for all the great things that we have here. And we're the biggest city in the area, so we're the big draw. But that presents a lot of challenges, too.
Sure. No, definitely a lot more traffic, a lot more people, and a lot more things that can happen. I mean, we are kind of that big city, and I think it's, for folks who look at this as a small town, there's components that certainly are that, but then there are the other things that come along with being that hub for business and shopping and restaurants. But here in 2021, so if the average was 86,000 a year, 2021 we only had 71,000.
Yes.
So a pretty dramatic decrease, about 17% for just overall calls for service. And I think it also speaks to the fact that roles that the police department plays in all communities. I mean, we call the police for everything.
Yeah.
Shoplifting, we're going to call the police. We see a strange subject on the street, we're going to call the police. Traffic accidents, and then you get into the more, the higher crime type things, but we're calling the police for everything. And I know in the conversation here nationally, certainly, what exactly should the role of police officers be? But the fact remains, you're the superheroes of every community. We call you for everything. And I find it very interesting in this conversation of defunding the police, which, fortunately has died down and there's been some common sense brought to the table,
Yeah.
that people finally realize, look, we can't do without them. And in cities where that was the overall message that we're going to defund them, they're seeing some major struggles right now.
Yeah.
The city of Seattle, I mean, the stuff that's going on in that location because of those movements, I think is pushing a lot of people out of that city, out of that state, trying to find new places where the values and principles are more aligned.
The defund the police mantra was always just not grounded in a knowledge of what police are doing and the challenges they face. And I talked about it in a video that I released regarding our latest officer-involved shooting. That oftentimes the better the police do in their job, the less the average citizen knows what's going on. That's when things are working successfully. That we keep crime and criminal behavior away from the average citizen. But what that can also lead to is a misunderstanding of what's really going on and the need to have police. And so you can easily convince yourself that, look, nothing's happening to me. I don't really need police. And I think that's what some communities did.
Yeah.
And now they're on the backside of that, and the backside of that is an ugly side, and because there is evil out there. I know I love people, and I do love our country, but there is evil out there. And that's why you have to have people who are willing to confront that. And that's what the police have been doing in America, sometimes successfully, sometimes with struggles. But the notion that we're going to totally disband the policing in America is just fantasy and has led to, unfortunately, some very poor and dangerous public policy that has left communities with far higher homicide rates and more people being killed than should have been killed. So it was a nice utopic thought, but it resulted in some real-world severe negative consequences.
I completely agree, and I have to commend, certainly here locally in the Four Corners, San Juan County specifically, just the support that I see throughout this community for our law enforcement agencies and our police officers. And I credit a lot to the fact of what you just said, at the beginning of that statement, is when police are doing their job, you don't see it, you don't hear about it. It's
right.
Because they're doing a good job every single day. But also, on the other side of that, the individuals that they are confronting or apprehending they're also not causing bigger issues that explode into the situations that we've had here.
Yes.
The two instances so far this year. But in that video that you released to the community, you talk about some cases where, was it just a day we were dealing with?
24-hour period.
Was it 4 other subjects or 3 other subjects?
Yep.
Felons with weapons.
Yep.
And there was, and we were able to handle those situations without any type of injury,
Yes.
so to speak.
It's just more common than people think, and like I said, that's a good thing. We don't want people to feel crime in their area, and I don't think that you generally do here in Farmington. We really are a pretty safe community, and our crime stats last year bore out that we actually had less crime. Even though you saw it peaking in other parts of our state, you really saw a significant decline last year in 2021. I'm hesitant to be a guy that chases crime stats on a day-to-day basis because they can fluctuate. There can be a lot of reasons for them. But in general, what you've seen here in Farmington is over the last year is more gunplay. And that's really has picked up since the start of January. So we did have an officer shot. It was the first time in 30 years that had happened or more. And you now see another, just a few months later, another officer-involved shooting, and that involves a felon with a gun in both cases. And then we actually just talked about it because surrounding our latest officer-involved shooting were these other incidents where officers were scrambling over. In one case, the subject had fired the weapon off in the parking lot of a bar, and we were able to track that subject down, get the gun, get him arrested. There was another one, it was a DV. In a public place, and a man went to help the woman, and the suspect points a gun at him. We were able to make an arrest in that case, and then you had a third one, another domestic, with a gun involved again, and so there is a theme, and in no way am I calling for more gun control laws. Well, we don't need them. We need to enforce the laws we've got, and the fact that the police are making arrests, now what we need on the backside is stronger sentences and less of the pretrial release when it's a suspect armed with a gun. We have to take that as the danger it is because releasing those people back out into the community represents a danger for all of our citizens. So once the police have safely managed to get somebody in custody who's armed and dangerous and has a felony history, we need that subject staying in jail. There's just no other way around it. That's what will keep the community safe.
That's got to be so frustrating from the component of being that arm of the law that is apprehending these individuals, to have to repeatedly apprehend them, knowing the danger that they pose, but still seeing them back on the street. And in many of these cases, and we're talking about it statewide, of course, out there committing crimes that are hurting people.
Yeah, it is frustrating.
This isn't just shoplifters. This isn't nonviolent criminals we're just talking about. We're talking about individuals with guns out there doing bad things, and they're back out on the street.
Yeah. I mean, I actually am supportive of our criminal justice reform efforts in limited ways. When we're talking about low-level nonviolent offenders who have a likelihood to show back up in court and aren't a significant risk to reoffend in the first place, get them out of jail. Let them go home, let them make their court dates. I have no problem with that. That's a good effort. But the flip side of that is we also should be identifying those subjects who are absolutely dangerous to the police and to our community, and who require extraordinary efforts on the part of law enforcement to get them apprehended in the first place, and then we release them back out right away. And so that is frustrating, and it's dangerous, and it leads to situations like we've seen this year. Now, in the one case where the subject shot our officer, he escaped from jail up in Colorado, so that wasn't a pretrial release issue. But in the most recent case, he'd been charged with 2 other felonies, and he had warrants out for those, and had committed a third, which we had a new warrant out for, and we still wind up trying to make an apprehension in a dangerous set of circumstances. So it is frustrating.
Chief, in that video that you released, you mentioned really was a call to action for people to contact their elected officials and their judges and talk about the need to keep our community safe. It can't just be one-sided. There are multiple tiers to this stool of having a solid public safety record. What exactly could the average citizen take away from that? I mean, when you say contact your elected officials, I mean, I believe that our city council is very much supportive of your efforts.
Yes.
What can we do?
I think, first of all, I think we've gotten over-reliant on social media, that we will get on Facebook or Twitter and we'll comment and we feel like we're doing something, or our voice is heard, and it really isn't. It's going out into the social media world, but it's our judges and our legislators that need to hear from us, and they need to hear from us in a couple of different ways. One is by voting, right? And this is an election year. We've got people that are up for re-election across the state, and we should be talking critically about what is going on in our communities with crime, and what is their plan to change that. So there was a lot of talk that we were going to get help from the legislator this year, and really what you got out of this session was not a lot that dealt with criminal justice and absolutely keeping people in jail that need to be there. And so they had a big shot, and it didn't happen. So now we're coming up on the elections, and some of it the judges don't have a lot of control over, because they're the laws and they're the rules coming down from the Supreme Court. But honestly, all of these people are elected, and we often do have a decision as to whether or not to find somebody dangerous enough to keep them in jail. And we need to be doing a better job of those subjects that really are a threat to our community, of seeing who they are and of keeping them. So in the latest case, honestly, he's out on 2 felonies, and we wind up in an armed confrontation. That is asking a lot of our police to constantly handle those things without anything bad happening, and to continue to keep people safe. And so to me, we need to be contacting our legislatures and asking them what their plan is for improving public safety. Need to be looking at the governor's race and talking with the governor's candidates and doing a better job of involving ourselves in the decisions that are going to be made on behalf of us down in Santa Fe.
If you could pick one thing, and maybe I'm putting you on the spot here and asking this question, but one thing that you would like to see that legislative body in Santa Fe do, that would, maybe it's a couple things that are in a combination, but that would really help shore up, because, and I'll tell you this, Chief, I mean, there's a fear, and I hate fear, because fear is a dominant factor in today's society. We are ruled by fear, but there is a fear that's eking out here in our community, concerned that we're going to end up like Albuquerque, which I think is unfounded, and I think there's some things maybe people can point to and say, well, this concerns me because I've seen this happen in Albuquerque. But it's a fear, and it's based on people's perceptions. We don't want to see that. So if there was something that the legislative body could do, and a couple of things, other than just reinforcing, maybe giving the judges more power, this catch and release law. I mean, giving them more authority to say, sorry, we're not even going to have to do any type of pretrial. I can recognize this guy as a danger. They're going to stay in jail. I mean, is that in the right path, or what are your thoughts?
I mean, I'm going to say some things that aren't sexy, but are the fundamentals of the job. First of all, we have to fund our public defenders and our district attorneys better. We are underfunding them, so they are not getting attorneys. Our DAs are very short-staffed, which means they're not doing as good a job as they could do if they had the staffing they need. And that is the state's obligation. We need to fund our DAs and our public defenders so that they can meet the timelines that the court's setting. So a component of the catch and release, as it were, is that the district attorneys have a certain limited number of days in which they can petition the court to have a subject held based on their dangerousness. And when they're short-staffed, they don't have the time to meet the timelines that the court has imposed.
Sure.
So, in the one sense, we're utopic in thinking they can achieve this on a consistent basis. They can from time to time, but not on a consistent basis, which means consistently what isn't happening is petitions are being made to keep the most dangerous truly in jail. The second thing is just foundationally. Now we've got this sudden love for we've got to be tougher on crime. We see the homicides down in Albuquerque. We're worried about crime, and so now we're doing things like a significant pay raise to the state police. And while I'll never say that that's a bad thing to be giving police more money, we didn't get in this trouble because of the pay. Our cops didn't retire and didn't quit because they weren't paid enough. They quit and retired because we were constantly kicking them around. We had a negative mantra about the police. We got HB4. We need to strip them of their, qualified immunity. We need to hold them accountable. There was very little rhetoric that was positive towards all the good things the police were doing. And we talked ourselves into police leaving. And now we think we're going to be able to throw money at the problem and it'll fix it. But honestly, it's every day, what are we saying and how are we treating the very men and women that we're asking to keep us safe? And so it is a combination of things that aren't sexy and aren't going to fix tomorrow. We fund the DAs and the public defenders more so that they can meet the timelines adequately, so they can hire the attorneys they need to do the job. We change our metric about how we're talking about law enforcement. We call out the flaws. We call out the chiefs that should be accountable for leading these agencies, but we don't demonize the men and women we're asking to keep us safe. And then finally, we finish it off with when the DAs and the public defenders have the funding and they're presenting these people are dangerous, we need to be keeping them in jail. We need to keep them in jail. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. When you're running around New Mexico with a gun and you have a previous felony conviction, you're not getting out. You're in jail until you're sentenced. That to me is a three-step plan to keep us safer.
I love having you on the show. This is good. No, I think it's important that people understand your passion for your community, passion for your job, passion for your police officers. It's an important component of having good leadership qualities, and I think you exhibit those things. You challenge the process, you lead by example, and I think in many of your situations, and certainly what I've seen within the organization, you're enabling your officers to act in the ways that are the right ways to act, and you're holding yourselves accountable and talking with Kalia. So accreditation, just kind of shift gears a little bit here. The accreditation components, which maybe you could describe exactly what accreditation is, but I will say this. When I spoke with the accreditors and discussed what my opinion of our police department was, it's the fact that I believe that we are a progressive police department, that we are challenging the processes. We're trying to find ways to make sure that our officers are trained appropriately. They have the tools in the toolbox to do their jobs the best they can. And on the back end, we're holding each other accountable, which, bringing in internal affairs and growing that department a few years ago was a very hard thing to do. There's a lot of pain points in how we went about and how that happened, but it had to happen. And I think that's put us in a better position today to actually serve the community in a way that our police department was designed and supposed to serve than maybe any other point in our history. But I just want to express that because I think people need to understand we are the largest police department 7 hours, or 3 hours, sorry, Albuquerque. Yeah. But in any other direction, you're talking 7 hours. Yeah. There's a lot of responsibility on our shoulders to make sure that we're performing at a high level because it's representative of the community that we live in. But we have a couple different advisory commissions who serve at the pleasure of the council. One of those is the Citizens Police Advisory Commission. I speak with those individuals, members of that committee on a regular basis. They always provide me good feedback in the job that you're doing and the transparency of what our police department's doing. I think that's critical. The Community Relations Commission, a very important commission working on relations between the city of Farmington and all the other cities and communities that surround us. And frankly, it was put in place, back in Mayor Stanley's time to help us ensure that if there were any complaints of discrimination here within the city of Farmington, we had a commission that was kind of hearing those complaints and helping mediate those things. Those number of complaints have dropped dramatically. We're moving in the right direction as a community. If you look at the demographics of who we are as a city, those have changed dramatically over 20 years. But I think we've always we've always kind of heeded the call, so to speak, and we've made progressive moves within our police department to show that. But CALEA, what exactly is accreditation? I'm sure some people know, but it'd be good for the general community to understand why that's important to us.
Sure. Well, CALEA is like an outside auditing agency that essentially, on a yearly basis, we are audited by them, accredited by them, and then every 4 years they do what they call an on-site, where they come in. It's a much broader and more expansive look at the agency to include, like you just described, interviews with some of the political leaders, interviews with citizens and their contacts with the PD, both positive and negative. Interviews with employees, a thorough review of our policies and our procedures. And they're looking at over 400 items that they say, these are the things you need to have in order to be accredited with us and be in good standing. So CALEA is the pinnacle of accreditation for law enforcement agencies. There's other accreditations. Those can be through state chiefs associations, and we have one here in New Mexico. And those standards are less. There's maybe 200 to 250 standards that you're asked to meet. So CALEA is much more rigorous. It's much broader. It is a national group, not just a local or state group. And Farmington, long before my time, Farmington has been with CALEA and has been accredited since the late 1990s, and we've continued that tradition here. So it's bringing in outside people from other areas, and I think you said you talked with an assistant chief who'd been in Tampa and been in North Carolina. So a lot of outside experience looking at what we're doing to see if what we're doing is in line with national trends, which really is our responsibility, my responsibility as chief, to keep us moving, with everybody else. Where's law enforcement going, and are we going in that direction? And if not, why not? So those are things at my level that I'm consumed with weekly to make sure that we're doing the right things and keeping in line with what you see nationally. Some of the things, you're right. When I first got here, we expanded our internal affairs division. In the last few years, and now all of a sudden it's been 4 or 5 years ago, we added a use of force review team that we review every use of force that our officers get into. So a lot of that is rigorous looking internally at how we're doing things. Whether we get a complaint or not is beside the point. What we're doing every day, we're looking at, and we're trying to make improvements and make fixes and improve our training or hold ourselves accountable if we screw up. And then finally, in line with all of that is, and I think you're seeing it with this officer-involved shooting, we're pretty transparent with the public as fast as we can be, without inhibiting the investigation or ruining interviews. We're getting information out to the public to let them know this is what we did and this is why we did it. And I think that all plays well with a community that has high expectations for its department, but also knows the stress that officers are under. And so it's a very understanding public that we have here in San Juan County. But one, we work hard to make sure that they know we know that they are behind us, and we try hard to live up to the standards they want us to meet.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And the rigorousness of CALEA in and of itself, what other benefits, obviously beyond just making sure we're doing the right things, is there other benefits to our agency for being accredited?
It forces you, because I was part of Anchorage PD and we weren't accredited. It forces you to address issues on a routine basis that can be easy to push aside as you're getting into the day-to-day grind of the job.
Yeah.
And so when we have something like we just had, right, we just had this last Saturday, an officer-involved shooting, of course that dominates the agency. But Monday morning we still had our on-site for CALEA. So we still had to deal with what are our policies, where are our weaknesses that they see, And if you didn't have that, it'd be easy to just focus on the current problem of the day and not keep your eye on the long range plan of what are we doing and where are we going with it. And when they come in, what they're doing is they're looking, do we have that policy that they think we should have? That is the national standard. And then B, can we prove that we're following that policy?
Right.
So it's one thing to have a policy, and we all been in
Everybody's got
agencies.
policies.
Everybody's got policies. But do you follow your own policy, or do you cut corners and you go a different direction? They go through our files and they say, we want to see examples of where you are following that policy that you have there. And so that's the rigorous part. I can show them the policies pretty easy. But on a day-to-day basis, every year that they're looking at, to go back through and prove that we do what we say we're going to do, that's the rigorous part, and that's the challenging part. So what we get out of that as an agency is constantly challenging ourselves to make sure that we are actually living up to what we say we're going to do.
Sure. When we talk about, an accredited agency, an agency that in my mind is very forward-looking and is challenging the processes and has, certainly in this area for a long, long time, when it comes to recruiting new officers, do you use those kind of sound bites and things with individuals or as we're going out to different marketplaces to recruit? Are those the kind of things that we're talking about with them?
Yes, definitely the community and the community support. Because as you're looking around the country, other agencies are trying to recruit, and their market isn't nearly as supportive of their agency. And that matters these days. When kids are going home and they're watching YouTube and they're just focused on all the attacks on police,
yeah.
That's not what you see here in Farmington. Yes, we hold ourselves to a standard. Yes, you're expected to meet a standard. But no, we don't have a community that's constantly critical and constantly asking for achievements that we're incapable of doing. Perfection's just not achievable when you're dealing with people. And we don't achieve perfection. Now, we strive for it, but I think that our community is so much more supportive of us and recognizes you're going to have those failings, where other communities chew up their own departments with unrealistic expectations. We do market that to our officer candidates.
Right now, just looking at look at our staff that we currently have, how many officers are we budgeted to have?
We're between 135 and 138. So we were 138 before we hit some of the COVID budget restrictions that we had, and then we even had to freeze some positions below that to help us make it through. So we were down to really an authorized number of 132, but we've been as high as 138. That's still what we strive to be at. We're well short of that right now. With more retirements coming, including Deputy Chief Tracy, who's been with us for almost 23 years. He'll be leaving here next month, which is a big hit for the leadership of the department. But last year was not a good year for us on retirements. We had 10 in 1 year, where we've gone, I think the 5 previous years, we maybe had 16 total. And we had 10 in 1 year.
Wow.
So it was a rough year. And honestly, I get the criticism of law enforcement, and in particular of law enforcement leadership. I accept it. It is my job to make sure that we're doing a better job and that we're looking down the road. What I don't accept is the condemnation of officers and the condemnation of the profession as systemically bad or evil, and you've seen it in some of the rhetoric, that the number one threat to communities are the police. That makes it extremely difficult to retain employees who have been part of that system for a long time, or to attract new people to it. Why would you send your son or daughter to work in a profession that's
or encourage them?
Right,
yeah.
that's so reviled. So that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. We really need to, not just a temporary pause in the rhetoric, but a long-term pause in the kind of savage criticism that we've seen over the last couple of years of police.
I've always been fascinated by that short-sighted response too, and I speak just as a father, who at one point my son was interested in Dad, I'd like to be a police officer. And I'm like, wow, I can encourage that. We can talk about it. I can give you examples and put you in face-to-face with individuals who are in that profession and talk about it. And somewhere that conversation came up, somebody said, geez, why would you want to do something like that? And it is just that immediate emotional response to what the general conversation has been.
Right.
But it's in those moments where you need to bite the tongue for a second and be like, well, look, we really need police officers.
Right.
Let's try and foster that and encourage it, at least have an honest conversation about it, as opposed to just saying, geez, that's crazy. Why would you want to do it?
When you watch the local news here over the last 5 weeks or so since the Russians invaded Ukraine. And you watch, and I don't know if you're watching it like I am, but you watch video after video of these young Ukrainians who flock back to their country to defend their country against a colossal enemy that's far superior in number and technology than they are. And you think how brave they are. And on a smaller scale, with less of the immediacy, that's the way I feel about people that are stepping up right now to be police officers. It is a very difficult time to do it. And to say, I still want to help my community, I want to make a difference, and I want to protect people, even at a time when that is not popular to say. I'm proud of the kids that are doing that and want to be part of our agency. I'm proud of the kids that we have working for us that are still doing it in the face of that kind of mantra. It's humbling, and I'm proud to be Farmington Police Chief. We have a great department. We have a great community.
I agree. In your recruiting efforts, is there any specifics you can give the folks? Like where do we go out and try and find outside of the city? Where do we kind of target to bring people to FPD?
We try hard locally and in New Mexico. That is our first priority. And usually you have better success over the long term of people that know the community and are from the community of staying. But we've had some success, too, of bringing in military veterans. So we'll hit some of the military bases, in particular in California, when people are getting out of the military and they're looking, okay, now what am I going to do? What's the next phase? I mean, this is a group that has already said, hey, I want to step up and I want to help protect my nation. Now we need you to step up and help protect our community. So that's been a fertile environment for us, too, through the years. But even college campuses, we have internship programs through San Juan College to have people interested in going through the criminal justice degree program to come in and spend some time with us and look at the different things, whether it's sworn or civilian like CSI, that we have different jobs that we have had interns come in, and we've had some success hiring people from those as well.
Do we have a Citizens Police Academy?
We do. Both the Citizens Police Academy and another organization called Women with Insight. That one is more focused on giving you self-defense skills. They do things like go and qualify on the range. They do things like self-defense tactics. But the Citizens Police Academy is also extremely popular, and that focuses more broadly on here's different aspects of the department. Here's different things that we do within the police department. And both of those are up and running as we come out of COVID, and call the department if you're interested in signing up.
I was going to ask you, so that is the best way? Just contact?
Yes.
What's the number to?
599-1001.
Good job. I'm glad you knew that.
Thank you.
I put you on the spot.
I could have said 911, but don't call.
Don't call, yeah. The Citizens Police Academy and the Women with Insight, how long are those? I mean, if I wanted to sign up for the Citizens Police Academy, what kind of timeline am I looking at?
That's a good one. I think you are looking at 10 weeks and 9 weeks, I think, for Women with Insight. But you could call me a liar for a week on either side.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, I think that's good. That's good for people to know. What about like a program for, teenagers? Do we have any type of, is it Explorers or is it?
We do. We have an Explorer program. That's probably coming back a little bit now out of COVID. So much was shut down to try and keep exposures less.
Sure.
But we do have it. If you're a teenager or you have a teenager that's interested in law enforcement, Explorers program is a great way to get a little better feel for what we do and whether or not that's something long-term you'd be interested in.
Any other community outreach type programs like that?
Not that I can think of right off.
Yeah, but it gives us the teens, it gives us the academy, Women's with Insight.
Yep.
I think those are great, Chief. I don't think a lot of people know that we have those opportunities for them to learn more and come to a more complete understanding of exactly what you all do. So
yeah,
that's great. Just looking here, I mean, we've moving into 2022, 2021, we implemented a whole new program to help us fight crime, and that was the Real-Time Crime Center. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about that.
So that is a pretty new program, but we're very excited about it, and I think the prospects for the future are almost endless. So Real-Time Crime Center is something that we stole a little bit from Albuquerque, but even Hobbs has one. Those are really predominantly the two in New Mexico that do. We've looked at departments in Utah and Arizona that also have them. And what it is an effort to use technology to supplement your manpower. So as you know, the Riverwalk is the jewel of our town.
Sure.
You know, we want people to come and enjoy it. We want people, as you've talked about, the perception of safety. We want people to feel like they're safe down there. But that is a lot of expanse for the police to patrol. Now, we've done things like we've got the park ranger program, and so we show greater visibility and we're around. But there's a lot of parts to the park that we're not going to be in all the time. The cameras were initially an effort to kind of supplement that. But as we've rolled along, we've tied into cameras that were already in existence in one form or another on stoplights around town, and that has given us the ability now to see and track things that we previously would not have been able to do. So even in our officer-involved shooting case, you know, we were using the cameras at the Real-Time Crime Center to track a suspicious vehicle that we thought, and ultimately did prove to be involved, was involved in the at least the effort to flee from the scene. So down the road, where I think we'll wind up going is when you have a camera system that stretches around the major themes of Farmington, like Farmington Lake, another very difficult one for us to patrol on a regular basis, but one which we can be watching real time to see if there's a problem and then start getting officers out there.
Right.
I mean, we are going to continue to want to grow ourselves as a community, as an attraction place, but those attractions are going to take, you know, policing and security. And so the Real-Time Crime Center really accentuates what we already have, which is a good, robust police department, but not one that can meet all the different challenges on an ongoing basis. So already I've heard from Bloomfield, I've heard from the county, they're interested in, hey, maybe we could put up cameras in these locations that we know are problem areas for us. How Farmington and San Juan County is going to be policing 10 years from now, I think, is vastly different than what it was just 2 years ago. As we build this system out, you are going to increase the ability for us to find and apprehend people that have broke the law, that are committing crimes actively. On top of that, there's the ability for us to link in with citizens easier. So if citizens have private security cameras, we'll have a portal that you can upload footage to us. If you have footage of a crime, you know, you don't even need the cops to actually come to your door. We're telling you, hey, in this area, if you have footage, you see it on your camera, you upload it to us. Businesses and schools have the ability to let us actively into their camera system. So if we have an active school shooting, we can tap in live to that and be giving our officers live information about where suspects are. And if you think back to, you know, the Colorado shooting back in the 90s, I mean, the officers had no idea where the suspects were or what they looked like. With the Real-Time Crime Center, using the cameras that are already in the school district, we can feed officers accurate information so that they can more quickly go in and neutralize whatever threats there are and safeguard kids. So I'm very excited about the prospect of it, and I think within 3 to 5 years, you will see this being a much broader thing, not just Farmington. It will be more throughout the county, which is good. We have limited resources up here. It's just us together, so we should be linked up and trying to provide greater safety for our community.
I mean, I recall conversations, people like, well, this is a Big Brother thing. You guys are just going to be watching everybody. Look, for me, this is a statement to criminals. We don't want you doing crime here. We're going to put technology in that can catch you, so don't do it here.
Yes.
You know, don't do it at all.
You know,
but we're going to find you.
We have hard rules and that govern how our officers are using that technology and what they can use it for to safeguard that. I get the community's concern about that. I don't want that. That isn't the community I want. But I also need, when you go into the parks, that you know that we're watching and we can keep you safe. Or you're not going to go into the parks and you're just going to talk about how dangerous it is or that we're becoming Albuquerque. And honestly, that isn't where Farmington is, and that's not where we want Farmington to be.
Not at all. Anything else on that or any other future things we're working on?
No, the Real-Time Crime Center will be another 3 to 5 years building out the infrastructure, the fiber necessary for us to get cameras all to remote locations like Farmington Lake, which you know you're doing all sorts of things to really expand what goes on out there and the number of people we bring out there. So really that is our biggest push right now over the next few years, will be making that system better and more complete.
Great. I think the last thing I had on here, Chief, was just to talk about maybe some top of mind things that you have concerns about. In our conversation at City Council a couple months ago, we had discussions about fatal traffic accidents, and that we were seeing really more deadly accidents, so to speak, more accidents with injuries because of the high speeds that people are driving through town. And if I was to tell you, any given day of the week, people want to talk to me about streets and roads and traffic lights and traffic in general, and how concerned they are with individuals who are not paying attention to the roads or staring at their phones, individuals who are driving on the bike lanes where we should not be driving on the bike lanes, and just general, just fear. Like, I'm concerned something's going to happen. I see people running red lights all the time. This is, because we're all on the streets all the time, we see these things.
Sure.
And I know that's been a big concern for your department as well. You can speak to that, or any other topics that are or concerns that we're seeing here locally.
That was, as we talked about crime stats last year, that was one of our biggest concerns, was the rise in significant crashes. Not even just the rise in crashes, which wasn't that big a number, but the rise in fatal and serious injury accidents was. Which, honestly, it has to be attributable to the fact that we had backed off on traffic enforcement. We weren't making the contacts that we used to make because of COVID, and we were trying to keep our force safe. We've tried to come back and now start enforcing again, but there's where some of the numbers, when we had all the retirements, our numbers are down. There's just no doubt about it. That means my officers are scrambling from call to call more than they're doing proactive stuff. So that's a little bit why I was telling you at the start, I'm not a big numbers guy, because numbers can tell you different things. Right. One of the reasons our calls for service is down is because we have less officers. We're making less traffic stops. Right. Just no way around it. It is a community issue, though, that we all need to be on. Even if we're writing tickets, right, people still are making the individual decisions as to how they're driving and what they're doing. And we've seen it countless times over the last year to year and a half, where we are getting into very serious injury accidents. People are having to be flown out of Farmington to Denver to Albuquerque for medical care, and that's just ridiculous. And so as a community, we do need to slow down. We do need to follow traffic laws better. And as a police department, it is a priority for us over the next several months, as we're entering into the summer months, that we've got to do a better job of trying to shut down some of the speeders. That means less warnings. That means more tickets when you get stopped.
Which we really don't want to do.
Which we really don't want to do.
No, we want people to follow. The reason those speed limit signs are there, right, for a very important reason. I mean, let's abide by those, and let's make sure that we're doing our part, so we're not putting other people and our own lives in jeopardy.
That's right. Yeah. Unfortunately, I've probably made more stops over the last 6 months than I had the previous 3 or 4 years combined.
You're making stops as the chief.
I'm making stops. They're blowing past me on Pinion Hills when I'm to and from work, and I'm making stops. So you never know who's out there, and it probably isn't your best day when the chief of police is stopping you for speeding. That's just my guess. I wouldn't love to see that smiling face, but we're doing it.
Well, it's good to know. It's good for the community to know as well that you don't just talk the talk, you walk the walk. I mean, if you're pulling people over, you're willing to do whatever it takes, and I think that says a lot about your character and certainly the culture that we've created here at the Farmington Police Department. So, any other topics today for our community to be aware of, or
I think we're eager for summer. We had snow today, which is shockingly hard to believe in April. I feel like I'm back in Anchorage. I didn't even leave, although I was in short sleeves up there in April too. So in general, we're excited for the summer. We know that's going to mean a lot more people outside and using Farmington Lake, and that's going to be a challenge for us. But I think we're up for it, and we're looking forward to a great summer.
I think if I could, certainly speak to, and I know you are definitely passionate about it, but don't drink and drive.
Don't drink and drive.
Don't do drugs and drive.
No.
Don't go to Farmington Lake and drink and party and play loud music and make other people around you who are there kind of for that more serene environment. Don't put people in bad positions because of your own selfish motives. Pay attention to the speeds when you're driving.
Yes.
This is about our community. I've talked about this before. All our collective tax dollars that go into funding these services, like the police department, they can only go so far in actually creating the community we want to see. Right. It's really up to us individually. Yeah. And if we want to be that change, we want to be that positive movement or see that positive movement, one, we've got to do it ourselves. Two, we got to talk about it with the people that we love and care about. And three, we got to follow up and make sure that we're supporting those agencies that are out there trying to back us up. But it really starts with each one of us individually. And so I look to the community out there. I want to have a great summer. Let's have a great 2022. Yeah. It's going to be beautiful. We've got all these great amenities that we're adding and developing and growing. And right now there's a lot of energy in the city of Farmington, which, by the way, makes your job even harder because we are trying to bring more people here. But maybe we can get those people here. Maybe we can get them to be police officers.
Sure.
They can be
sounds good.
firefighters. They can come work for the city or any of these other, every agency in town, business in town is looking for people.
That's right.
But it's a great place to live. Certainly, I credit our police department and law enforcement agencies broadly here in San Juan County for helping us continue that, and then just look for people to continue their support and do the part that they need to play the part they need to play.
Yeah, so, I mean, what you were talking about with the not drinking and driving, not doing drugs and driving, slowing down, I mean, these are all components of being a good citizen. And so, if each of us is asking what can we do to make things better, let's be good citizens. If you are going out to Farmington Lake, let's keep it under control, and so we're not disrupting everybody else. We can go out to the bar and we can have some drinks, but then let's not be driving.
That's right. Let's not be driving.
And, I get it, marijuana is legal now. I probably won't be on the first list of people to try marijuana for the first time in my life, but if you do, don't be driving, and putting other people's lives at risk. So it's about being a good citizen, which each of us can do, and it's the basics of being in a democracy.
Amen. Well said. Chief, thank you for being with us today, and I appreciate your willingness to kind of get out into the camera. You're always out there in social media, and I think people know a lot about you because and I can say this, how much you care. One of the first statements you made the other day really stuck with me about the officer-involved shooting, and that's the fact that it's about the family, too, of the individual who was, put us in that position as a police department. But you have a true heart, you care about those folks, and you don't want to see those kind of things happen, period. And I just appreciate the fact that that's who you are as a man and as one of our community members and the leader of our police department. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you for tuning in. Again, this is our community. Let's make it the community that we want to live in. Let's do the things we know we need to do. Let's be good citizens, as the chief said. There's simple things to do there. Let's be responsible for ourselves. Let's be accountable. Let's have a positive attitude. Let's not look for all the negativity and things that are going on in the world, because we live in a very positive place, and a lot of that has to do with you. Thanks for being with us today. We'll see you here next time on the Mayor's Table.